the person you steal from than benefit to yourself. Consequentialism might say that. And finally, the third key nuance is that consequences consider long-term and short-term consequences. So for example, let's say that you're trying to see, is smoking a good thing to do? And you say, well, in the short term, smoking is enjoyable. However, in the long term, smoking is very damaging. And so consequentialism would probably dictate that overall, the consequences of you smoking is negative, so you should not smoke. Any questions on what I said so far? And once again, please ask if you have any confusions, because I want to make sure that everyone can follow along.
You do. So what is a word for? Word. What is a word for? The consequence is some people dead and some people survived. But it means why we have war, why we have fight each other. But as the quantitative framework, it doesn't make sense because the consequence is always bad. So why we have war?
Well, I mean, you could argue that this is obviously very controversial, but you could argue just war theory maybe that some wars are good. Like for example, during World War II, probably was good to wage war against the Nazi regime because, I mean, they were committing genocide. But other wars might be a lot less clear, right? So you have a valid point. Yeah, exactly, Frank. Consequentialism is trying to weigh the payoff. Okay, well, if anyone has any questions, keep asking them, but I'm going to move on. The next question we have about consequentialism is, like, what consequences? What payoff? What are we trying to achieve here? So there's some very common ones. Some common ones include happiness, truth, like maybe we're trying to achieve truth in life, maybe money, maybe you're trying to maximize life, or maybe you were trying to maximize utility. Can you guys think of any other possible consequences that we could try to maximize that would be good? Love, okay. Also, by the way, I know that several people just joined as well, but obviously I can't repeat everything I went over so far, so feel free to watch the video that I'll post shortly after this meeting. Emily says freedom, okay. Luck, property. Job opportunities, okay. Career, okay. Maximize friendship, okay. Yeah, so these are all valid consequences. Maximizing peace, that's okay. Health, peace. Oh, someone joined again. Man, why are people still joining? Okay, so yeah, these are all valid consequences that we might try to maximize, but some of them are certainly uncommon. Like for example, I've seen very few frameworks that try to maximize job opportunities or luck or love or property. So we're just going to talk about by far the most common consequentialist framework, and that's called utilitarianism. First of all, just to be clear, on the Venn diagram on the upper right, that explains how utilitarianism is related to consequentialism. Essentially, utilitarianism is a type of consequentialism that tries to maximize utility. And the reason this is so popular, or one of the reasons, is that utility is so broad. Utility covers so many things. It covers friendship, it covers peace, it covers health, it covers family, it covers career, it covers job opportunities. I'm not sure about freedom, but it could cover freedom. It covers love. I'm not sure about luck either. But what I mean is utilitarianism is kind of the catch-all or the catch-most for consequentialism. So once again, for people who are new, next time please try to be more on time, but I'll upload the video so you can see what you missed out on so far. So yeah, utilitarianism is once again the most prominent type of consequentialism. So in this class, we're not going to go too deep into utilitarianism, but there's two people that are very, very important to utilitarianism. And these two people are Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. So Jeremy Bentham is a philosopher, a very influential philosopher. And what he said is that the ultimate moral goal is to maximize happiness for all moral agents. So essentially he's saying that we should do whatever maximizes happiness. So if we try to apply this, for example, to the trolley problem, we would say, well, killing 5 people would probably bring great unhappiness to themselves because they died, their families, their friends, everyone who knew them. Whereas killing 1 person is likely to bring less unhappiness. So Jeremy Bentham would probably say we should kill the 1 person to minimize unhappiness or to maximize happiness. Now, and John Stuart Mill essentially said the same thing. But the key difference between these two people is that Jeremy Bentham, the guy on the left, says that there is no difference between types of happiness. He says that all types of happiness are the same in quality and are only different in quantity. So there's actually a very interesting way to describe his philosophy that he outlines in his many works, which is that Bentham kind of treats morality like a math question. For example, let's say that I do this action of donating $10 to the local, I don't know, pet adoption center. And then Bentham, yeah, sure, the local food bank. Bentham would say, well, $10 would bring maybe slight future unhappiness to myself because I kind of treated myself for $10, but it also brings happiness to myself because I donated the money and I feel happy about that. It also brings great happiness to the people who received the donation, and it could also bring happiness to the person who maybe does the transaction. So overall, he could say, well, maybe it brings overall -1 happiness on myself, 2 happiness on the orphanage, or not the orphanage, the food bank, and maybe 1 happiness on the person who does the transaction. And then he would add them all up. -1 + 1 + 2 is 2. And he would say, well, the net happiness of that action is +2. So therefore, we should do the action. So obviously, that's a very oversimplification of what Bentham actually says. But it's a reasonable interpretation. He's trying to put everything into numbers and kind of into a math equation. On the other hand, John Stuart Mill is also a utilitarian, also very influential, and he agrees with Bentham on most things. However, he disagrees with Bentham on Bentham's point about the quality of happiness. But John Stuart Mill thinks that different types of happiness are of different qualities. So for example, he would say, reading a good novel brings you happiness, and so does rolling around in the mud brings a pig happiness. But the quality of happiness that you receive when you're reading a piece of a good novel is of higher quality than the happiness that the pig receives from rolling around in the mud all day. So John Stuart Mill says that there's both differences in quantity and differences in quality of happiness. So I'm going to pause right here. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to type it whenever. I'll do my best to respond. So I'm curious what you guys think. Who do you agree with here, assuming that you agree with consequentialism, which obviously, like, maybe not. But who do you agree with? Who thinks that there is difference in quality of happiness, and who thinks that there is no difference? So Rowlett and Frank say they agree with Mill. Frank asked, John thinks happiness is the same. No, it's the other way around. Bentham thinks all happiness is the same. So Adelina raises the question, how do you define quality of happiness because it's personal? And yeah, that's one of the main arguments for like the people who support Bentham. Like, um, like we might think that reading a book is better than rolling around in the mud because we're biased. Like we're humans, we like reading books. But maybe a pig says that rolling around in the mud is better because maybe they have their own reasons. So that's one of the arguments for arguing that there's no difference in quality. Kelly says it's different. Chongchen Liu says how long it keeps you happy. Well, that would agree with Bentham actually, Chongchen, because Chongchen, I mean, because that doesn't that isn't a qualitative difference. That's just a number that says, well, something might keep you happy for 5 minutes versus something that keeps you happy for 10 minutes. So that would actually agree with Bentham. Okay, so does anyone want to explain, unmute themselves and explain why they agree with Mill? Because it seems like most people agree with Mill. Frank asks, isn't quality measured on how long it lasts? Well, no. I guess some products might be, but when we're talking about happiness, quality is more about intangible things that we intuitively think are better. How long it lasts is, I guess, more of quantity. Like, this is not, like, the quality of spoon might be how long the spoon lasts, but when we're talking about happiness, it's different. Emily says, if the reason, wait, sorry, could you explain that, Emily? Chris says how memorable being happy that one time was. Well, Chris, that's kind of like a gray area, right? Because maybe how memorable is only tied to how happy you were, or is there a deeper meaning? Chris says graduating is a lot more than winning a game. Okay, well, let me ask you, Chris. Is graduating more than winning a game because you experience more happiness, or is it different because there are different types of happiness? Kelly, quantity is how happy you are. Quality is, once again, kind of the intangible thing that says even if like the person reading the book is the same happiness as the pig rolling around in the mud, the person reading the book is still experiencing happiness of a higher quality. Does that change your opinion, Kelly? Kevin says it's a bigger achievement. Okay. Buck says if all the things you give can't be turned into a better consequence, then I think it's worthy. Okay. Jane says it depends on how you perceive the happiness. Okay. Yeah, it does. Well, but the argument is like, is it possible to perceive happiness differently? Alvin says graduation is more than winning a game. Well, my question to you is, we know that intuitively, but like, how do we know that? How do we, like, is it possible to scientifically?
Kind of like if you win a game, like it's just like you win a game, there are like a billion more games to play, and like you might lose the next one and everything. But like graduation, it's like you get through a period of your life, and you don't have to do the old like boring stuff, like, and you like just move on in life. But like winning a game, it's not necessarily like moving on. Winning a game is just like you work for it, you get it. Graduation is like you work for a really long time, and then like you're like, oh my god, I just worked for so long, so like I got something.
Okay.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like it's the level of what game you want. Like if you want like a game that its reward is $2 trillion, it might or might not be more important than graduation.
Okay, I see. These are all valid points. Oh, there's more in chat. Sorry, it's hard to keep up with chat. So Emmy says there should be different. Okay. And Steven says that he sides with Bentham because everyone has a bias, and who's to decide which is better? Yeah, that's exactly the argument that a lot of people who side with Bentham would say. Okay, I'm gonna move on. If anyone has any questions on this, once again, type it in the chat. But I want to get through this presentation. So now we're going to move on to deontology. Deontology is kind of the opposite of consequentialism. It's the second prevalent moral framework that we're going to talk about today. So what deontology is the ethical theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether that action itself is right or wrong under a series of rules, rather than based on the consequences of the action. So if we go back to the trolley problem, those of you who said it doesn't matter the consequences, it just matters that you're not directly killing someone, that's an example of a deontological framework. Also, deontological frameworks are non-aggregative, so it doesn't matter, it doesn't consider the net benefit of actions. It simply says that if an action goes against my moral code, or maybe a universal moral code, then it is wrong. And if it follows a moral code, then it's right. So obviously the central question here is, like, what moral code? What rules are important? So I give several examples here. Maybe you could follow the rule of always help others. Maybe you could follow the rule of never kill others. What are some other examples you guys can think of rules? And the criteria of judging if it's a good rule or not is the same as before. Okay, well, Rowlet, so you said spread happiness. That's kind of more in the gray area because, I mean, are you trying to do the action that spreads happiness? Or are you trying to do the action that spreads the most happiness? Because I assume that you mean the latter. And if you mean the latter, then that's consequentialist because you're trying to achieve the goal of spreading the most happiness. Does that make sense? Rowlet? Okay. Like, just to give another example, the rule of never kill others, that's not consequentialist because you're not trying to maximize anything. You're not trying to achieve any consequence. You're just saying, like, never do something that leads to someone dying or something like that. Yeah, don't drink and drive would be a deontological rule. Frank says, but there's no golden rule. What do you mean by that, Frank? Work hard, okay. Don't break the law. There's no, okay, I see what you mean, Frank. I thought you meant golden rule as in, like, the don't do unto others what you don't want them to do to you or something. That is true. The goal of deontology is to have a set of rules, not just one rule. So yeah, there's no golden rule, but maybe there's a rule, there's a golden set of rules. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the that's just a coincidence, two most important philosophers, deontological philosophers. The one on the left is Immanuel Kant. Have you guys heard of Kant? He's pretty famous. He's very, very, very influential. Mary says, I love quant. Okay, I see you. Who that? Nope, 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 nope. Okay,